It's time for part 2 of Reddit user Moscato Runner's 3-part question about going back to college despite her parents-in-law not really supporting her when they supported her husband. It's a little bit of a tricky situation, but here's part 2 of the question. My in-laws have always backed up my husband for school, but kind of kicked me in the gut during a conversation last night where Hubs mentioned I might go back. Haven't told them I already applied. And they said she'll be too busy being a mom. The same in-laws who told me I'd hate being a stay-at-home mom and I should figure out how to work once our son is here. Normally I have no issues with my in-laws. I'm not complaining about them as people. Just this comment got to me, pregnancy hormones, ... And Caleb is very experienced with university policy, and he's really helped a lot of people and given them a lot of great advice about how to go about getting their degrees. And so I wanted to turn this question over to him and see what you thought.
And as a first-time father, I also have a lot of experience with pregnancy hormones. And the first thing that I want to say is don't chalk it up to the hormones. What you're going through is a completely reasonable response to what anybody would be feeling if they were going through this situation. So the first thing that I would say is maybe cut your in-laws a little slack. They might not know how much you've planned this out. They may have thought, oh, she said that she might go back to college. It's just a fad. They may think that you haven't put a lot of thought into this, that you haven't really considered all of your options. And clearly you have. According to what we're reading here, you have put a lot of thought into this. They might not know that. And if you go to them and you say, hey, just so you know, I want your support because here's where I want to get to and here's how I think I can get there, you may be surprised at how supportive they would be.
So you're kind of saying then that she's justified in feeling how she feels about it, but we should cut them slack because they don't fully understand the situation. And so it would be a good idea to get them on board with this.
I think you need to have that support community, and having your husband's parents on board would be an important part of that. And this might just be a simple misunderstanding. So I say if you approach them, you might be surprised with what you find. Another comment that your in-laws made was that they thought that you would be too busy being a mom. And I kind of want to correct them on this because Cliff is a professor. He has had lots of moms in his classes. There is no correlation between a mom and somebody who's not a mom and their performance in a class. If something is important to you, you make time for it. And that is a good rule for life, if you ask me. Yeah. So if you are serious about college, if you're willing to put in the effort and show up virtually, then you're going to be successful in it. And I would definitely challenge them on that.
And I would add to it, too, that some of the moms that I've had in my classes have had multiple kids, and some of them infants. I mean, I think I've had at least a couple moms who had at least 5 kids, and it's just impressive. I think the coolest thing about it is that they're setting an example for their kids. And your kid is going to be too young to really appreciate the example that you're setting, but that is something that when you tell them about it later, they're going to look back and be super proud of you, and it's going to be a great example for them.
So one thing that we mentioned in part 1 of this 3-part question was the importance of being careful about the timing and the amount of classes that you're taking at a time. So yes, you can be a successful mom and a successful student at the same time. They are not mutually exclusive. But do you want to go back to school full-time? Do you want to take one class at a time? These are all things that you need to consider because the amount of classes that you're taking at a time does impact your likelihood of success. So one thing we talked about in the first video, make sure that you're taking an amount of classes that is reasonable given the other responsibilities that you have in your life. So start out with 1 class, maybe 2 if you're feeling really gung-ho about it. Or start out with a CLEP test, a DSST test, or a straighter line course just to kind of dip your toe into the waters and just make sure that you've got the confidence to succeed. It's very important that the pacing be right. So that is one thing that I would pay a lot of attention to. Only you know your schedule, but just make sure that you're not being overzealous because you definitely don't want to get burnt out.
And that's a really good point. I advise students all the time who are like, oh, I want to go take 18 credit hours, but you can tell they struggled in their last semester, and you say, well, hold up. If you take 18, but you fail half of them because you didn't have enough time to do all the 18 credits, I mean, where does that leave you? You might as well have just done 12 and passed them all.
And the fourth thing we're going to talk about, and this might be the most important one if you ask me, is the importance of having a support community. People who are going to be standing behind you, cheering you on, not only as you start the race, but also when you're in the middle of the race and it's getting tough, and also when you're finishing the race. Get your immediate family on board. You don't want to be going through this journey feeling like your family is not there supporting you. So you need to talk to them about it, show them that you know where you want to go with it. You're not just taking college for fun. You have reasoned through it, and this is a step on the way to something bigger, and you'll get their support. Another important thing is make sure you have a close friend that can kind of keep you accountable, because when college is tough, it can be tough to keep going. And if you have somebody to vent to, you have somebody to kind of bounce ideas off of, don't underestimate the importance of that. Very important. Have a close friend. And another thing, a little plug for our Graduate U Facebook page. The Facebook page is a place where we have a lot of graduates, people who are starting school, are in the middle of school, and at the end of school, and they have a lot of good tips there. It's a great support community, and we both recommend that you go get plugged in there.
Yeah, you can find a link to our Facebook community group for Graduate U in the description down below. You can also find a link to download our 7-step checklist that will take you from no college to graduated and even beyond to a job or grad school or something like that. It's an easy step-by-step to follow, and we highly recommend that. If you want to go check out part 3 of this series, we're going to go ahead and link it right here, where we start talking about how we can save Moscato Runner about $10,000 to $12,000 pretty easily based on what her plans are.